What up, creatures from cyberspace? John here with another GraveTalk Quickie. And today I'm going to give you my ranking of the Conjuring universe. Starting with The Conjuring in the summer of 2013, the franchise has exploded into an unexpected universe spanning 7 films. Unfortunately, though for anyone familiar with horror franchises, not unexpectedly, the quality of the movies vary wildly release from release. So I took one for the GraveTalk team and recently watched all 7 of them in a row. Let's rank them. Starting with the worst first is 2019's Annabelle Comes Home. At the time of recording, this is the most recent movie released in the Conjuring movie universe, and it's by far the worst. The movie sports a brief cameo by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga to open and close it, which are the only bright parts. Other than that, we follow the story of Warren's daughter Judy and her babysitters after one of them accidentally releases the Annabelle doll from its holy prison. The movie is not scary, it's not original, and its sole purpose must be to lay the foundation for future spin-off movies. We see all of these different items that the Warrens have cleansed and are storing in their little Ghostbuster containment system. And one by one, we see all of their backstories, and it gets you wanting to know more about them, or so the screenwriter thinks. In reality, it doesn't. And they just go from set piece to set piece to set piece. It's just so cliche. The acting was fine. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. And there was maybe 1 or 2 creepy or scary scenes. I think the television one comes to mind. But overall, it's the weakest of the bunch. The girl who releases Annabelle must be one of the dumbest characters in the whole Conjuring universe, and her decision making is just incomprehensible. It's not just horror movie bad, it's like dumb even for a horror movie character. There's no threat. Like, even one of the characters who does get possessed, nothing comes of it. It just magically resolves itself. And really, the best this movie has to offer is a series of semi-effectual jump scares. Avoid it. If you haven't seen it, there is no reason to watch it. It adds nothing to the Conjuring canon, and it would just waste 90 minutes of your life. Next, also released in 2019, The Curse of La Llorona. After watching The Curse of La Llorona, I thought, well, the Conjuring movies can only get better from here. Annabelle Creation proved me wrong on that, but that doesn't make this a good movie. This movie follows Anna Tate Garcia, who's played by Linda Cardinelli, as she tries to save her children from the curse, which is essentially a demon that murders children. This is another one that is just boring. Linda Cardinelli carries this one on her back. She does her best with really mediocre lines and scenes, but she's excellent in it. Despite that, though, there's just nothing to work with. The characters are bland. I don't even really remember them, to be honest. You just don't connect, and it's hard to empathize with them because their decision making is also extraordinarily poor. And there's huge plot holes in this movie. And I'm not talking like cinema sins, nitpicky plot holes, but drive a semi-truck through size plot holes. The story just glosses over them because they need them to happen to get the characters from point A to point B so they can move this so-called story along. And they hope that you just won't notice. And if this was a better movie and a scary movie, then maybe you'd have been so enthralled you wouldn't notice. But it's so mediocre that really all you have time to do is question it and ask, wait a second, what is happening? Another one on the definitely avoid list. Also, despite quote unquote being in the Conjuring universe, this movie is so tenuously connected that being part of this universe doesn't add anything to it. It doesn't add any canon. It doesn't add any color. It doesn't make it any better. It's just a cash grab addition to the universe where they probably didn't think this movie would attract any attention on its own. They hoped that, part of the Conjuring universe would attract a crowd and people who like the Conjuring movies, they'd be like, let's go give this one a shot. It's not part of the Conjuring universe. It's its own standalone movie with one character that makes an appearance in 2 films. Skip. Next, 2018's The Nun. Ugh. The Nun was the biggest disappointment in the whole Conjuring franchise for me. And I'm probably alone in saying this, but it was also the biggest disappointment of horror movies in 2018. When I saw the trailer for this film, I was optimistic. I loved the visuals. I love that gothic, dark style horror. And as they really drilled home, this is the darkest entry in the Conjuring franchise. And I was like, sign me up. This could be really cool. And I thought they could make a really great concept around a haunted gothic monastery and, all the religious imagery, a demonic nun, all of that. Check, check, check. Unfortunately, none of that happened. Instead, we just got another paint by numbers horror movie that somehow ties into the Knights Templar and just cliche, cliche, cliche. Lots of jump scares, but not good ones. They definitely were going for quantity over quality here. Acting, not great. Characters, there was a couple of cool ones, and overall, also just bland. And the story, I mean, almost nonsensical, especially when you hear about the backstory. And the whole third act is just a major letdown. They definitely couldn't figure out how to end this movie. So they just went off the rails with the ending. Man. The look holds up. I did like the visuals. I did like the setting. Still think the premise is sound and a lot could have been done if they were willing to be a little more creative than just step by step, everything you've seen before in a horror movie. But I've also watched this movie 3 times now, so I don't want to act like it's unwatchable. Just for me, it didn't live up to its premise, not even a little bit. Those bottom 3, I think, are widely considered to be the worst movies in the Conjuring franchise. I think people might differ where they rank them, but none of them are going to cross over into, the top, anybody's top list, I imagine. If they do, I would say reach out to me in the comments below or on Twitter. I would love to know your defense of any of these 3 movies, because I found them to be lacking, but maybe there's a different perspective I could come at that may make me enjoy them more. 2014's Annabelle is probably the first movie on this list I wouldn't consider bad. It's just more pointless than anything. It's executed fine, but it's just another case where the movie is mostly boring. I am not afraid of scary dolls. That is something that has just never been a point of fear for me. Chucky, Puppet Master, any of those, I have a really hard time buying into them being scary. And then we find out that Annabelle isn't even really possessed. There's a demon that's moving Annabelle around. I don't know. It's not great. The movie, it follows a suburban couple and the insanity that comes into their life when the Annabelle doll either becomes haunted or gets a demon attached to it. I went in expecting very little, and that's what I got. I don't really understand the characters or their motivations, and the ending, the ending was so dumb. It was I didn't expect a lot, but that ending was way below even my low expectations. There were a couple of okay scenes. They did a good job of ratcheting up the tension. It was just a non-offensive, jump scary heavy horror movie. It's not one I would say to avoid like the last 3, but there's no reason to watch it when you can watch one of the better films on this list. Now we've crossed into the final 3, and honestly, these are all good horror movies. The Conjuring 2 covers the famous Enfield poltergeist and really does an excellent job of being creepy. You seriously feel for the mom and the kids, and I found myself rooting for them to succeed. They're constrained by the fact that they're in a horror movie, of course, but their decision making makes sense. They acted like reasonable people, and I felt like I could connect and empathize with what they were going through. I particularly enjoyed the bit where they called the cops and they were pretty much like, yeah, I don't know. What do you want us to do? We can write a report. Best of luck to you. Have a nice day. Hilarious. And it was a good way of dealing with the whole, why don't they just call the police situation that sometimes crops up in horror movies. I really liked The Conjuring 2. I thought it did a good job of walking the fine line that all sequels must walk, where if it's too much like the first one, people, like myself, complain that it's too similar and what was even the point of making it. stray too far, and people, once again, like me, will complain that it's nothing like the original. So why even they bother making a sequel? It's tough. Sequels are almost like a lose lose situation, but The Conjuring 2 manages to thread the needle. And it's not perfect, but it's a solid horror film. And if it's on, I'll always watch it. If someone's like, hey, do you want to watch The Conjuring 2? I would definitely join in for that. Next up is 2017's Annabelle Creation. This is a prequel to the prequel of the Annabelle doll. And despite that, it is surprisingly good. Depending on my mood, this can really vary between number one and number two for me, which honestly is shocking because on paper, it's an Annabelle movie. And you know how I feel about dolls. I just mentioned it. Annabelle movies are historically very weak, but it's actually really, really good. It's scary. The characters are all distinct. And once again, I could relate and root for them. I wanted them to win, I wanted them to escape. There are some seriously tense scenes. There was a one involving a ball on a string that they shoot out of a gun. They make excellent use of a wheelchair lift. Considering these are children, I think the acting's where it needs to be, and overall is does the job. The nun in the movie, great actress. Felt for her. I don't know. I can go on about how great this movie is, but I think I've made my piece. And finally, probably no surprise, that just leaves 2013's The Conjuring, the movie that started it all, and honestly, I believe a classic of modern horror. James Wan really hit a grand slam here. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga introduce us to the Warrens, and you immediately connect with them. For the victims, I think they're fully fleshed out, and even if we do have to deal with the old moving into a new house cliche as the premise for this film, it's executed so well that you don't really mind it. The movie is legit scary. The whole clapping game, an amazing scene. It's spooky, it's tense, and the movie does an excellent job building to its conclusion. Now, its conclusion is off the chain. There's a lot going on. It's high energy, but I felt like the movie laid the foundation for that and it earned it. It didn't just suddenly jump into this totally different kind of movie. I love The Conjuring. I watch it multiple times. I'd watch it at the drop of a hat. It's visceral and it's quite a ride. If you're even slightly interested in horror movies and somehow haven't seen The Conjuring, you should watch it immediately after this list. You will not be disappointed. So that's how I would rank the Conjuring films as of right now. I imagine as more come out and as I rewatch them over time, this list might shift some. What do you think of the Conjuring series? How would you rank them? Let us know on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And you can always find more Grave Talk content here on this YouTube channel or at thegravetalk.com.